All right, today's masterclass, that's right, we're doing the Herods. We have three different levels. One is beginner, second intermediate, last one pro. We're going to go through some tips and tricks at each level, and I'm going to share with you everything I know about Herods. Plus, I got some of these tips and tricks from the community too. So there's a lot of combined brain power at work behind the scenes here. So let's get into it. Starting off the beginner tier, I have the thing called dealing with small problems. So what do I mean by that? Let's say your opponent is attacking you with a really small character, something that maybe has less than 6 power. If you have Herod's Temple out, you can activate Herod's Temple, put Herod's Executioner into play, equip the Executioner's sword, and equipping will actually toss it. So you're going to be tossing the sword at their character. So this is really good with dealing with small individual characters that are trying to get you into battle and trying to win initiative that way. Another way to deal with small problems is just block with Herod Archelaus, who's protected from lone heroes. Before you block, activate Herod's Temple, and then block with him. And what's the opponent going to do about that? Spoiler alert, there's something opponent can do about that, but we'll get to that later. All right, what about if an opponent has big problems? Let's say they have a bunch of characters that they're banding into battle, and you don't know what to do about that. Well, one of the things you can do is you can use Herod the Great to choose the attacker. So if they have an entire chain of maybe like 10 people banded in battle, and they have one person in their territory, you can just say, Herod the Great is going to block, and I choose him to attack. If you pair that up with a Herod Temple toss, hopefully then you won't even have enhancements to use for that character. Alternatively, you could try to deal with their giant banding chain by blocking with Herod Agrippa, then tossing. That's also an option. He's protected from more than one heroes in battle. Let's get to another level. Let's say you have a Herod Archelaus, but you also have a no straw in your hand. You can start to play some mind games with your opponent. If they attack with a single character, you can just block with this and hope they try to ban somebody into battle. And then you can play no straw, which is cannot be negated, and top decks all the heroes in battle. Or if they see Herod Archelaus in your territory, oh man, if I attack with my single hero, that hero is just going to get blocked by Herod Archelaus. And then they attack with the giant banding chain. That plays right into your no straw. So it's like a interesting mind game situation where your opponent has to figure out the right line to take. So this is a new card, Glory of the Lord. It's a promo card, which says restrict players from playing enhancements on characters. So it's almost like Toss in the sense that you can block with one of your protected guys and then play this. And since they're protected, there's not a lot opponent can do, especially because they're protected from dominance. So I feel like we're going to see this play happen a lot more once this promo actually comes out and is available for people. There are a lot of territory good cards running around that cause problems like Nazareth, like Glory of the Lord. Here's a couple ways you can use Herods to deal with them. Number one is Herodias' daughter. He says, if blocking, you may reserve a good card in territory. So this can hit a good 3 woes. This can hit Nazareth. This can hit Glory of the Lord. And you can just leave her in battle, get the really good initiative, or you can exchange her with a Herod from territory reserve. So this card's really good if you protect her from negates or prevents. And Herod's Executioner can pair up with a Foreign Spears in your reserve. You can equip this to discard a good card in a territory. So this will hit 3 woes, and this will hit Nazareth. But if they have a Nazareth out, you're probably not searching your reserve. So it is what it is. And that's right. You pair up any of these characters, all these Herods or Outsiders, with Overtaken, and it just becomes super easy. As long as you attack with a hero with the negated in the special ability, and you have Overtaken out, this ability is going to last until your next turn. So that gives you a whole turn of having your characters cannot be negated. And so if you have an Outsiders, you can just underdeck their attacking heroes, cannot be negated. Or if you have a card that's protected, having really good CBN protection is also, which makes their options to kill you pretty limited. If you are playing Overtaken, here's a question. When's the correct time to play your Herodias? Overtaken only applies the CBN modifier to cards that are played while it's active. So if I play out Herodias, then attack, and then trigger Overtaken, Overtaken's modifier is not going to be applied to Herodias unless she enters battle or she's put down. So what I want to do is that I want to activate Overtaken, attack with my characters, and then during my discard phase, play down Herodias, and she'll have the CBN on there. And that'll actually last for as long as she's kind of just chilling in her territory. Modifiers are tricky, but maybe we'll have to make a masterclass about modifiers, but too long, didn't read. Play Herodias after you play your Overtaken during your discard phase, and cannot be negated as long as she chills in her territory. I haven't really seen this card a lot. It's called Herod's Treachery. It says you may take an evil New Testament card from deck if used by Herod. So if you're running Crowd's Choice, this card just becomes territory class grab anything in your deck. Because you can go grab Crowd's Choice, and Crowd's Choice can go grab anything else. So if you're wanting to put some speed in your Herod's decks, maybe consider this card in running Crowd's Choice. Herod's Temple says, protect gospel humans and territory from harm. And gospel means Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. And so there's a couple key characters that are not in those books of the Bible, such as Herod Agrippa, he's from Acts, and Outsiders, which is from Revelation. So don't be thinking that these guys are going to be protected in your territory, because they're not. Herod's Temple only protects gospel. And also don't think you can activate Herod's Temple or Jerusalem while your deck is empty. Because during battle, you may reserve the top card of deck too. So you have to do this in order to do this. So if you can't do this, you can't do this. Similarly, if you're playing Jerusalem, beware if you have an empty deck, because then you can't really do this effect anymore. The empty card from reserve. We're wrapping up the beginner tier here. But if there's one thing Gospel of Christ players fear, it's Romans destroy Jerusalem. And the easy way to do that is you can play Duplicity and just have this in your reserve, because it's a pretty situational card. Maybe your opponent's running Old Testament, and so you probably don't want this in the main deck. But Duplicity can go and interrupt the battle, play an evil enhancement from reserve. And guess what? A lot of the Herods are Romans. So if you put this on any of the, I think all the Herods are Romans, but you play Duplicity on that, and then you can play Romans destroy Jerusalem, which is CBN, destroy all heroes and fortresses. So destroy all New Testament heroes on all fortresses. So you are going to lose your Herod's Temple. And this is more of like a played if you want to watch the world burn type of thing. And so if you can pair up this card with an Old Testament offense, then maybe you've got a really spicy banana on your hands. We're hitting the intermediate. These are the plays that are not so obvious. So if you're using a Malachite Slave or Deceiver to go get a Herod out of your deck, why not just exchange with Herod's Guard, then Herod? Because it's just free value on the table. If you put Herod's Guard in battle, you can prevent the next good card played in battle. So if you go like Deceiver to Herod's Guard to another Herod, you get the Herod and you also get the free prevent. Herod's Guard can also be used to prevent characters. So as he says, if blocking, prevent the next good card played in battle. And so when you put a character into battle, that's considered playing it. So you can pair him up with Herod Great, can go choose someone in territory to come and block. And if you want to prevent that character's ability, just block with Herod's Guard first, then do Herod, and the next card will enter battle. It'll be prevented, because technically they're playing it. And Herod the Great is just left against their character whose ability is hopefully being prevented. There's a lot of characters that don't like being put into battle by Herod. So you can use a card like 20 shekels to make it so they can't just hide in the hand all the time. So this card says you may bounce an OT human in territory, you reveal opponent's hand, play a character. Sometimes you can play like meek characters, or you can play dual-sided, dual alignment characters as the good card when they want to be trying to use them as the evil card, and pair that up with Herod for some great choosing to attack. Similarly, you can use the Holy Grail to convert their evil humans in their territory to brigades that the opponent is not playing, and then choose those heroes to attack. Have fun attacking with your blue Nero in your clay Gospel of Christ deck, right? So Duplicity has this clause that says each player may draw X, where X is the number of meek lost souls that player controls. And sometimes you don't really have that many meek lost souls, and so it's kind of like your opponent gets to draw a couple of cards and you get nothing. But if you use Duplicity to go play Feudal Inquisition, which can end the battle in a stalemate, no cards can be drawn. The battle is over, this effect does not happen. If you use Feudal Inquisition in your opening, you cannot discard a card from reserve, but you can look at it. The rule says you cannot remove cards from reserves, but if you activate this as a star ability, you can just look at the reserve. So use this card as like get a little sneak peek about what's going on in the opponent's reserve on turn 1. If you have Herod Archelaus and Contagious Fear in your opening hand, consider using Herod to do his star ability first, which top decks a dominant from each hand. Or you have a card like Contagious Fear, play that second, and when it goes second, you can reserve the top card of their deck, and hopefully it's a dominant. So this is like a really cool way to snipe an opponent's dominant just on turn 1. You can also use Delivered as a star ability that will target the top card of their deck. If you have Herod Agrippa and you have a card that adds to battle like Murderous Command or Sheol, you can add Herod to battle to negate a card, perhaps like a battle winner. The opponent just played a card that just really wrecked you and you want to try and negate it, well, maybe consider using Sheol or Murderous Command to a Malachite Slave to Herod Agrippa, and that way you can just negate that card. If there's an Orphans in play and you have a Contagious Fear that you want to try and resolve, Herod Antipas can actually do it. He says evil New Testament enhancements used by this card are regardless of protection. So normally lost souls, the orphan's lost souls will be protected by your ability that you're trying to do. But this one is regardless of protection, so he can use Contagious Fear just fine to get around orphans. If you're playing Herod Antipas and trying to grab a battle winner from reserve, he has really good numbers, but even though he has good numbers and you block with him doesn't mean you'll get a guaranteed block off. So the best time for you to block with him is when the opponent has played Angel of the Lord and the player has played 3 woes. Because if you just block with Herod Antipas, they can just play Angel of the Lord and get rid of him. Or if you block and search, they can use 3 woes to negate your taking of a New Testament evil card. So if you're playing Herod Antipas, watch out for these 2 cards. So I looked it up, and believe it or not, Herod Archelaus and Herod the Great are nativity cards. And how is this useful? Well, there aren't any cards that explicitly reference evil nativity cards, but if you're running a nativity deck and these guys get converted to heroes somehow, they're actually going to work pretty well with your offense. There are lots of good cards that reference nativity, so this is only useful when these guys get converted and there's good nativity cards running around. All right, so Daenerys says you may take an evil Roman from deck or a New Testament grade enhancement from reserve. And so all these Herods, they're Romans. So if you activate Daenerys, it can just go find your Herods. You can't do this clause because this requires an emperor, and none of these are emperors, they're all kings. But if you're playing a deck with emperors and Herods in it, maybe you can use Daenerys to grab some Herods before you grab that emperor. It can also be used to grab duplicity out of your reserve. I only found one thing that makes this relevant, but Herods are evil kings. And so there's one card that references evil kings, the High Places. It says if your evil king blocks, you may discard a covenant or exchange 2 lost souls. So I don't know, that's interesting, something that might not be immediately obvious. If you're building a Herod deck and are trying to decide between to put No Straw or Abandonment in your deck, I would advise you to put No Straw instead, because there's a lot of cards that care about multi-brigade evil cards, namely Michael and Goshen. And if Michael and Goshen are in play, they're going to want to toss Abandonment. And so this is just going to be a disaster. If you have this and they attack you with Michael, try some No Straw instead. And plus, having a 3/3 is better than having a 1/1 enhancement, right? I guess the only reason you might want Abandonment is if you're playing a gold and black fence and want to have some flexibility with who can play what. If opponent has removed your Herod's Temple with a Shipwreck, you can actually use your Resurrection to search your discard pile and put Herod's Temple back into play. I know Resurrection likes to be played on turn 1, but maybe it's later in the game, you haven't drawn your Resurrection yet. It could come up, it could happen. All right, let's get to the pro level. These are what the best players are thinking about when playing Herods. Number 1 is outsider board management. When I'm playing my games, if I see an artifact in my hand, I'm just going to turn it face down and put it in my artifact pile. But maybe I should be a little bit more careful when I'm playing outsiders, because outsiders care about how many cards you have in play. And those artifacts that you turn face down and put in your artifact pile, those are considered in play. So pro players are going to be doing everything they can to try and maintain that board disadvantage. So if they're running cards like Temple Veil, they're going to be bouncing their heroes and trying to get the size of their board down and not committing cards that they don't have to the board. Here's the pro outsider block. Let's say you have Herod's Temple and outsiders. You can activate Herod's Temple, block with outsiders, and assuming you have board disadvantage, you can underdeck the heroes in battle. And with the last one you do, you underdeck outsiders. And so that way they can't interrupt the battle with enhancement because you're tossing enhancements. And that's why they can't also use the 3 woes on your outsiders because the outsiders is underneath your deck. And now there's no target for their 3 woes. So this is one of the best outsiders blocks there are. And it's really fun to pull it off. Why did I put Delivered plus Amalekite Slave in the pro category? If you have Amalekite Slave, you can activate an artifact from reserve. If you control an Egyptian. Yeah, that's not so exciting. But here's the thing. If an opponent blocks and they give you an Amalekite Slave, it retains its Egyptian thing. It retains its Egyptian identity. So even though it's a lost soul in your territory, it's still an Egyptian. So I hope I'm saying this right, that if you play Delivered while opponent has given you a Amalekite Slave, you can activate an artifact from reserve. So I don't know how relevant that's going to be or how often that's going to come up, but today I learned, right? Here's the crazy thing about Herod Antipas. He says you may take an evil card from a reserve. A reserve? That means you can target your opponent's reserve too, right? So if you pair Herod Antipas with cards like Mary's Prophetic Act, which can reserve evil cards from opponent's deck, you can get their best New Testament evil card into your hand. So maybe you can reserve a Christian Martyr or 3 woes, and you're in business. Here's Sheol being a little bit sneaky. Let's say you have a foreign spears in your discard pile and they have a bunch of black evil characters. So when you use Sheol's ability to discard Sheol and banish an evil card in discard pile, you can add a human of matching brigade to battle. So whatever evil card you're discarding, you can add evil human of either brigade. So for example, you can add a black or gold character to battle with Sheol. So most of the time you're going to be using Sheol to add your gold characters to battle, but sometimes this does come up where you have maybe a duplicity or foreign spears, and you can start to add their black or their gray characters to battle with Sheol. So that's tricky and sneaky. So let's say you have a Herod the Great out and he's equipped with some foreign horses and he's just chilling in your territory. If you activate Herod's Temple and then you go to try and block, that's considered playing this card and it's going to get tossed. And so if you're hoping to try and do a draw 2 and play the next enhancement while you have a Herod's Temple out, then you're going to be sadly mistaken because this is just going to get tossed. And it could be good if the opponent's attacking you with like 2-2 or a 1-1, but oftentimes it's not ideal for you. Herod's Executioner can equip from reserve, but you don't have to equip it onto Herod. You can target any valid target. For example, let's say you have a Herod Archelaus in your territory, you block with Herod's Executioner, put the foreign horses on Herod Archelaus, and then ban to Herod Archelaus, and then that would trigger foreign horses. Because if you did it the other way around, if you want Herod's Executioner, equip foreign horses would have to trigger before Herod Archelaus enters battle. And you might not want this effect triggering right away. You probably want to have it trigger once both characters are in battle. So that's just a heads up there too. If you're running a deck that plays Foretelling Angel, you can use your Herod's Temple in conjunction with Foretelling Angel to actually curate the top card of your deck. So let's say you're attacking with your Daniel deck and you see the top card of your deck is just a card you don't want to draw. You can activate Herod's Temple on your turn during your battle. Even though it's not going to be doing any tossing, it is going to be reserving the top card of your deck and effectively getting it out of the way so you can draw better cards or Daniel cards. Maybe you're trying to dig to some Daniel cards. So the combination of these two cards is pretty cool. You can also use Herod's Temple to do a desperate play for some lost souls, because if you reserve a lost soul off the top of your deck, it actually gets put into play and not into reserve. So if you have a card like Complacent or Humble, this might catch the opponent off guard if they're attacking and they think they're going to be able to use a Dominant to win the battle. You can activate Herod's Temple. You can activate this card 4 times, hope that Complacent's in the top 4 cards of your deck. And if it is, you get to put it in play. And then opponent's going to be caught completely off guard and probably going to lose the battle because they can't play their dominance now during the battle phase. Or same thing with Humble. There's a lot of preventing going on. You can do a Desperation Herod's Temple to try and dig for Humble and make your cards cannot be prevented. And if you're playing Nativity, you can do a similar thing. For example, this Son of God is the Nativity card, and you can use Bethlehem Stable to get it from your reserve during your upkeep. So let's say on your turn, you're just trying to close out the game. You really need to draw Son of God. While you're blocking, you could activate Herod's Temple a bunch of times. You're wanting to actively hope you hit your Son of God off and put it in your reserve, because on your next turn, you can use Bethlehem Stable to go take a good Nativity card from your reserve into your hand. So this is very similar, but you can also take this concept and apply it to Jerusalem, who can take a New Testament card from reserve during your upkeep. So let's say you just need to draw 3 woes and you win the game. Maybe while you're blocking, consider activating Herod's Temple 4 times and then trying to reserve the top cards of your deck and draw that 3 woes, put it in your reserve, and then Jerusalem can go grab it during your next turn. Remember that scenario we talked about with Herod Archelaus and Herod's Temple? And if you activate this and then you block with Herod Archelaus, you feel like pretty safe, right? That's what the opponent can do. What's the opponent going to do about that? Well, Herod Archelaus is protected from their hero. It's not protected from your Herod's Temple. So if the opponent is able to toss down Herod Archelaus with maybe 10 points of power from their enhancements, he's actually going to die because the source of the toss is Herod's Temple and not their character. So this is a pretty important concept to know about. And during this video, I've been saying before you block, I'm going to activate Herod's Temple and then do whatever I got to do. And here's why you probably want to do that. Let's say you block with your Herod and then you say, can I activate Herod's Temple now? That they actually have a chance to play the dominance and activate their manual triggers. So in theory, they could play awesome things, which allow them to play enhancement in battle on a meek hero. And they could play Authority of Christ, which would discard all characters. And that would be really sad for you because you just wanted to toss everything. So imagine if you'd instead gone before you blocked is like, can I activate Hera's Temple? And they said, oh, you activate Hera's Temple, then you block. Now their window for awesome things, destroying your character that's blocking, is gone. This is just going to get tossed instead. And maybe they didn't want to play this because everybody was being protected. So this is a really relevant scenario about why you want to activate Hera's Temple before you block, but use your best discretion on that. And the last play I want to talk about, it's kind of silly, but I think it's worth mentioning. Herod Agrippa can ban to a Sagittarius. You don't really see this Herod all that often, but he has this ability, says if a hero withdraws from battle, you can capture it. So he's going to ban a Temple Guard who can play a enhancement with a banned ability. You can play Revolt, which bans any number of non-Roman evil characters into play. And if you ban to Goliath, who would negate the play ability, so Revolt would go back to your hand, he's going to withdraw all heroes in battle, which is going to trigger this. So you get to capture all opponent's heroes in battle. I don't know, it's kind of cute, but it's a pro level play. I never would have thought of this, so thanks, I'm Null, for showing me this one. All right, so that's the Herods Masterclass. That's all these interactions that I've come up with, and my friends on Discord have also helped me with this as well. So if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.